So today's video, I wanted to talk about something that a lot of people that are battling complex PTSD, whether it's from childhood trauma or whether it's from narcissistic abuse or prolonged and chronic stress, they battle this obsessive need to prove themselves, to prove their reality. Okay, so let's talk about why. Let's first understand it, because I feel like we can't really start changing it until we understand why it's happening. For those that are new, my name is Michele. I'm the owner and founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet live weekly and we take everything that we are learning about complex PTSD and we learn how to put it into practice in our daily life to experience lasting change. So if that's something you might be interested in, make sure you check out the links in the description box below. So the first thing that I think of when I hear that somebody has this obsessive need to prove themselves, the first thing that goes through my mind is that this person has probably experienced severe gaslighting, okay? Because when you have been in relationships with people that gaslight you, you lose touch with your ability to stay in your reality and to trust yourself, okay? In other words, if you had parents where every time you were like, I feel this, your parent was like, no, you don't, you feel this. After a while, you lose touch with trusting how you feel, right? Then let's say, after living in that kind of a dynamics, let's say you wind up in an intimate relationship with somebody. And now every time you share your perspective, it's twisted and turned. So for example, let's say you do something for a friend, right? And you do this out of the kindness of your heart. And you tell the person in your life that maybe is an emotional abuser. And you're like, well, I really felt motivated to do this for so-and-so. And it's met with this weird anger, like you're such a, you just use people. You just do that because of this weird accusation. And you're like, what? And you start trying to explain to a person that doesn't care about truth. This person doesn't want to understand why you did what you did. They just want to accuse you of something so they can have their drama, so they can see your negative emotional reactions, feed off of that, which is narcissistic supply, and they feel better. But when you're in a relationship with somebody like that, you don't understand that. Right? You don't know what's going on. You just know that when you do this, you're being accused of that. And when you try to explain it, it's never believed. And you're left facing that over and over again. And here's the thing. Here's what makes it so challenging is that the emotional abuser, they believe so well their own lies that it's said in such a way that so many victims start doubting their reality. For example, if the abuser's very critical and insulting of the victim, okay, and the victim calls them out on it and says something like, when you say that, that's horrible, I feel awful and it hurts. It's such a mean thing to say. And the abuser turns around and says something like, I can't believe you took it that way. Everything I say, you turn into this drama battle. You're so sensitive, it's ridiculous. The person that's facing that accusation now gets confused. And after a while, you don't know what to trust. You don't know who to trust. And unfortunately, you lose touch with your own reality unless somebody else confirms it. And that's what the narcissist does intermittently. Every now and then, they will see your perspective. So when you've been living in that, trying to convince somebody of your reality for a long time, and then they finally, one time, they act like they get it, there's a tremendous amount of dopamine that comes into your brain, and you start thinking, if I could just convince them, and you stay stuck in this need to get them to see your point of view. Okay? I hope this isn't confusing you. I'm just trying to give you different examples as to why or where that obsessive need comes from. Okay, when you've lived in those dynamics, that becomes normal to try to prove yourself. You're always trying to prove yourself to an emotional abuser. They never, ever agree with your reality. And on top of it, they don't see you and them as two people. They see you as like an extension of themselves, which means that there can only be one point of view. So when you've lived with somebody that makes you think that there's only one point of view for a long time, and yet you never have your point of view, again, that's another reason why you have this intense need to have other people validate it. Okay, so that's the why. It happens to almost everybody that has been through toxic relationships goes through that. So the way that you break out of it, okay, it's a process. So you have to be patient with yourself, because this need to have somebody else believe you or see your perspective or agree with you has become part of your belief system. Okay? In other words, the belief might be, I need them to agree with me in order for me to feel good about my decision. I need them to see my perspective in order for me to know that that's my perspective. And the reason I bring that up is because if it's part of your belief system, then it's part of your subconscious programming, and that takes time to change. The first thing that's really powerful in order to start breaking this obsessive need is to start paying attention to you, paying attention to how you feel. And I say that because anyone that's been through long-term relationships with narcissists, or anyone that has had emotional abuse in their life, most people are very externally focused. And there's a ton of reasons, I'm not going to get into all of that in this video, but if you're externally focused, you are always wondering, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? What do they need? What is their perspective? Do they like me? This about them, that about them. And you're never kind of evaluating what's going on inside. And when we're like that, we tend to think if somebody else, because we're so externally focused, if they see and confirm it, then it feels good. And the reason is because we're not inside of ourselves confirming anything, right? It's so externally focused. So the first step is to start paying attention to how you feel. What's your perspective? Start noticing that there are different perspectives. And I know you might know that on a logical level, but if you've been through relationships where people didn't allow you to have your own perspective, on a subconscious level, we forget that, guess what? People are allowed to think that, and I'm still allowed to think this. People are allowed to think I'm horrible at this, and I'm still allowed to know that I'm pretty darn good. And I know it. So, it's not just about knowing it on a logical level. It's about starting to notice when we aren't recognizing that, when that subconscious programming is kicking on. Because in a way, if we feel that we need to prove, right, that means that we see our perspective and we need them to have the same perspective as us, which is kind of how the narcissist treated you, right? So you want to break out of that, and you want to start viewing their perspective and your perspective as two separate things that are allowed to coexist, even if they're different. I would start with that and make it something you approach with curiosity. Like, I'm going to see how many, what people think of this, and I'm going to be observant to their opinions. I'm going to self-evaluate my opinions, and I'm going to start noticing all the different opinions, and then I'm going to start validating mine. And validating means allowing other people to have their perspective, knowing your perspective, whether they believe it or not. So it would sound something like, let's say I know Let's say I know I'm an amazing artist, right? And I have family members that are constantly criticizing everything I do. And so I happen to be around them, or coworkers, okay? And I happen to be around them, and they criticize, they say something like, you don't know, that much about art. Well, if I know who I am, I know how good I am, if I trust myself, if I validate myself, I won't like their comment. But I will still be able to hold on to my reality when I say something in my mind like, well, they're allowed to think that. They're allowed to view me that way, and I'm still allowed to view myself as I see myself. The more you can let go of needing them to validate you, because you are validating you. Okay, you're generating it from inside. It's very much like if I was thirsty, right? I could make myself dependent on other people by hoping they'll give me a glass of water, right? Or asking for a glass of water, or hinting that I need a glass of water, or trying to get them to see that I'm thirsty so that they'll give me a glass of water, so that they'll agree with me and give it to me. Or I can go pour myself a glass of water and not need them to do it for me or with me. And that's where we want to get, or with your perspective, with who you know you are, your identity. It's nice when people see us for who we are. It's nice when we're seen as we really are. But if we're not, even though it hurts, right, because we're human, but we can still allow those two perspectives to exist. But it takes reminding ourselves over and over, because our default is feeling like everyone needs to see and understand it exactly how we do. For whatever reason, that's become our default. Now we have to change that thought process by allowing other thoughts to exist, and that takes a new neural pathway, which means it's the everyday little things that we do that show ourselves that we can see another perspective, know our own, and hold on to it, that will strengthen the new belief, which is people are allowed to think whatever they want, and I'm still allowed to hold on to my reality. Okay, I kind of feel like I've talked in circles right now. I don't know, but I hope that made sense. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below.